All right, Nick, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. The draft is behind us. The undrafted free agents are in the building. We're starting to see this team shape up. We're starting to wonder now, can we get insights from the coaching staff? Are we starting to hear stuff about these new players other than what they did in college? Or can the coaches find any assets, any players on this team that they like? Can we hear anything? That's what we want to hear right now. And in fact, we have heard something. Head coach, head man, the most important guy, Raheem Morris, came out and gave some really great praise about two players, but I like one player in particular, what he said about him. I think Falcons fans are going to like these comments. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, I'm Andrew. That's Nick. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, head coach Raheem Morris had some interesting comments, some very high praise for two guys in particular from this Falcons draft class. I think Falcons fans are going to love this one. Let's jump straight into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on SI.com. He says, even so, the Falcons didn't grab former Georgia standout, talk about Jalen Walker, with both hands without having one eye on him assuming a leadership role fairly quickly. He says, you can see this is a well-coached man before he even went to college, Morris said of Walker. And when he got to college, he got some of the best coaching in the world from Kirby Smart and those guys. I talked to him about the leadership and some of the growth that they brought to that program. I hate to even talk about him this way, but it's hard not to when talking about a guy like this, like that. He says, now, Xavier Watts, a little bit of the same cloth, but you see future captains in these guys' makeup. And I think that comment in particular is very interesting. We talk about Jalen Walker, a first-round draft pick for the Falcons. You expect this guy to come in top 15 pick. You expect him to be a leader. That's the expectation when you have a top 15 pick. They come in, they lead from the front. They got to be a big part of the defense going forward. They're going to be vocal leaders in the locker room. People are going to look up to these guys. Very high pedigree coming in so high in the draft. But then you talk about Xavier Watts. You see a guy that was drafted in the third round. I think this is a very interesting comment in particular talking about Xavier Watts, that this is also a guy that Raheem Morris sees as a future captain of this team, sees as a future leader of this team. And it makes you wonder a little bit, what is he seeing? Where can he see it coming from as far as when it comes to Watts? And when you look at what he did in his college career, I think it's easy to stand out. Let's get into this graph that we made comparing Xavier Watts to the two top safeties in this draft class. The first two safeties drafted, Malachi Starks went to the Baltimore Ravens. Nick Emmanuel went from South Carolina. He's really good guys, really talented safeties. But what were their accolades compared to Xavier Watts? You look at Malachi Starks. This is a guy who only got 4 accolades, awards, records set in his career. You got Emmanuel, he got 5. But you look at Xavier Watts, this is a guy who had 8. He basically almost had the same amount as both of these guys combined. Xavier Watts was a really high pedigree player coming out of Notre Dame and did a lot of really good stuff. I'll run through what he did very quickly just so you can understand. This is a guy who in 2023 won the Nagurski Trophy as the nation's top defender, first team AP All-American. He led the FBS in interceptions that year. You go to 2024, again, a first team All-American, and he was with only Travis Hunter, a very high draft pick, as a guy who were only 2 players in the country that were AP All-Americans in 2023 and 2024. This guy who tied for the FBS in interceptions with 6 that year. He was a Sugar Bowl defensive MVP in their win over Georgia en route to the national championship game. And he set a record for the school with a 100-yard interception return for a touchdown against Southern Cal. This is a guy who does everything. He has awards for being recognized by his peers and by people outside of the college football world, analysts, reporters, as being a top player in all of college football. He has one of the awards for being the top defensive player in the country. He has awards on his team for being, setting records, doing play on the field. And get this, also team captain as well, something that neither Malachi Starks nor Nick Emmanuel nor Jalen Walker were as well. So this is a guy who, when you wonder, okay, Why are we talking about a third round draft pick that we're saying is cut from the same cloth as a first round top 15 pick that we're seeing as a potential captain, a leader of this defense? When you look at what he did, you look at what he brings to the table, Xavier Watts, it is blatantly clear this guy is very talented. He was a leader at Notre Dame, and Raheem Morris himself thinks he's bringing those same traits over to Atlanta, and they think that he can be a leader here as well. I think this is really high praise and good news for Falcons fans going forward. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Falcons fans, in the comment section below, what do you think? Let's talk about these two guys, Jalen Walker and Xavier Watts. Who do you think is your pick to be a future captain of this team? Who do you think earns it? Is it a guy like Jalen Walker, first round pick out of Georgia, high pedigree player as well? Or Xavier Watts, the guy, the third round pick out of Notre Dame, kind of slid in the draft a little bit, but when you look at what he brings to the table, has a lot to offer as well. We're talking about future captain of this team. Who do you favor? What do you think about these two guys in Walker and Watts? Let us know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest out of Atlanta?
So I think Watt is one of these special prospects. I really think the Falcons got something that could be great for them in the short, medium, and long term here. And I believe Raheem Morris is kind of alluding to it with his comments there. Watts to me reminds me a little bit, his story at least, of Jalen Hurts, of course, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. But people forget Hurts was the starting quarterback early in Alabama, got benched for Tua, was a team guy, team first guy, didn't transfer out right away, stuck with the team, was a leader, got an opportunity to help bail his team out of a few situations, rode with Alabama to a national title as a backup, then went on to transfer to Oklahoma, did some good things there, fell to the second round to the Philadelphia Eagles, kind of bid his time a little bit. Again, great team guy the entire way. Finally gets rewarded with a Super Bowl championship this past season. I think Xavier Watts is cut from the same cloth. This was a kid coming out of high school that was a four-star top 100 prospect in the country out of the state of Nebraska as a wide receiver. He went to Notre Dame first as a wide receiver. He gets there. First thing this Fighting Irish coaching staff does is say, hey, man, after being wide receiver for 1 year, hey, man, why don't you move to linebacker, right? You go from being a wide receiver trying to avoid linebackers, now suddenly you are one. He does that for a season. The Notre Dame coaching staff looks at him and says, hey, man, why don't you try and move to safety? Why don't you try that out? And not once does Xavier Watts say, you know what, I'm going to transfer. I think I'm a wide receiver. I'm going to transfer. I'm definitely a linebacker. I tried that for a year. Now I'm definitely going to transfer. No, sir. He's a team guy, listens to the coaches, wants to buy in, wants to win. What does he do? He sticks it out, becomes a great safety, becomes arguably the best safety in all of college football. Twice All-American, 2 times, like you mentioned, leading the country in interceptions, sole leadership in 2023, tie leadership in 2024. One of the best football players in all of college football. Leader, team captain, sticking with the program, the perfect example in today's day and age in college football with the transfer portal, NIL dollars, and all of that. The Xavier Watts story is becoming anomalous. You don't hear it often very much. But what we saw from him throughout his entire Notre Dame career, that's going to lead into the National Football League. And again, we saw it with Jalen Hurts. And I think one of the things you brought up that's very important is the accolades and awards, because I know a lot of people are like, well, what does that really mean? A lot of these awards, when it comes to the Nagurski or even being an All-American, there are a lot of great players, right? There's really a good chunk of guys that could win those awards or be named All-American across the entire world of Division I college football. But what these voters do is they often reach out to coaches and other connections and say, hey, who's a good team guy? Who's a good person, right? I'll go back about a decade and a half to Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. People remember he won the Heisman Trophy at Texas A&M, but his second year, he actually threw for more yards, had a better passer rating, and threw for more touchdowns, better completion percentage. Statistically, he was better the year after he won the Heisman Trophy, but he was not named an All-American that season and did not win the Heisman Trophy, obviously. Why? Because people looked at him and saw him correctly as a bad teammate and a guy who had a lot of maturity issues. So despite having better numbers after his Heisman Trophy season, all the voters said he's a bad team guy. He's not worthy of being All-American. He's not a leader. And so they did make him an All-American. Now we compare that to Xavier Watts, exact opposite. Everyone to a man, every voter, every analyst, every coach, every sports writer is like, this guy is the quintessential football player. And I think that's why Raheem Morris and the entire Atlanta Falcons coaching staff has to be so incredibly excited. And I think you Falcons fans will too, right? Obviously, safety, there are other positions of need. Of course, front seven, getting after the quarterback jumps to the top of the list. But you also have to remember the Atlanta Falcons were only about average in the NFL in interceptions last season. They only had 12 picks over the entire 2024 season. That was dead in the middle of the pack. If you look at Watts by himself, last season he had 6 picks, and the year before that he had 7. Or I may have gotten them backwards, but he's had 6 and 7 over the past 2 years. So he can jump in right away and be a ball hawking playmaker. So not only is he a great leader, not only is he a great story, but also he's great fit. And I think all of that aligns to the Atlanta Falcons being incredibly excited about this kid. I don't know how he fell in the draft. Well, I know how people fall in love with stupid measurables. They look at him and say, well, he's only 5'11", or, he's not 220 pounds, or whatever silliness. I want the guy who's a great football player. I want the guy who's a team guy. I want the guy who's coachable. I want the guy who's really just good at working with his teammates around him and winning football games. That's what Watts has been every step of the way in his career. He comes as a wide receiver, top flight recruit. Coaches want to move somewhere else. He's like, hey, man, I'll do whatever it takes to help the team win. That's the kind of attitude, that's the kind of leadership that really can set teams apart. We saw it with the Patriots for so many years. I mean, they had Troy Brown moving to defensive back. They had all these guys. They had starters playing special teams. Those things really do matter. Jalen Hurts for the Philadelphia Eagles, even now, that kind of leadership, it really does matter. And it's very clear if you listen to Raheem Morris or anyone else around the Atlanta organization right now, they believe this Xavier Watts kid has the potential to be that kind of leader.
Yeah, Nick, and I think you bring up something really important, and I like the way you framed it because something we talk about a lot when we look at college players. We like guys who transfer, maybe move up from the lower levels of college football and work their way up to maybe like a high-powered team. A team like Notre Dame obviously would be a team we would consider to be one of the better teams in college football. But we like guys who can work their way up. That shows maturity. It shows growth. It shows, all right, this guy couldn't make it here, stayed there. But I think in the same vein, what Xavier Watts did at Notre Dame is as impressive or as important as what we like to see out of players like that, but maybe even better. The fact that you come to a team, you get the red shirt, reserve wide receiver, then you come in obviously wanting to play offense, and then they say, hey, you're not cut out for offense. How about try defense? Play linebacker, something that's completely different from wide receiver. Then he's not really great at linebacker, and they're like, hey, why don't you go play safety? Try that out for a little bit. So the fact that this is a guy who, came in with a goal, with something in mind, and was able to be mature enough to be a grown up enough and have vision and, respect for himself enough as a player to say, this is a school I want to play at, but whatever they want me to do, I'm going to develop and I'm going to be the best at that. I think that shows just as much maturity and just as much growth. So I think this guy, you see what he does on the field. We talked about his accolades. We talked about his production. He has a lot of production. I think he has the instant ability to be a playmaker for this team, make big plays. We talked about the 100-yard interception return versus USC. He can do things with the ball in his hands as well. This guy is very impressive, but I think the maturity, the ability here, the team captainship, that's why Raheem Morris says those are the traits we look at. This is why we think this guy is cut from the cloth to be a potential captain of this team going forward. It's the maturity, the ability to stick with it, and just work until you get good enough to be good enough for the team you're on.
Yeah, just one final point to end on here. I need to pull up his report from NFL.com just to see how did this guy fall to the third round? Because we're talking about him, we did the numbers. It's like there's no reason. Listen to this guy's strengths, right? This is from NFL.com. Rare instincts to create on-ball production, plays with excellent twitch and anticipation, eye and range to play over the top or put lid on cover 2 buckets, tremendous ball skills, almost never penalized, very rapid diagnose and response to the run, displays good pre-snap recognition of play design, scheme independent, right? That's awesome stuff. Now we go over to his weaknesses. Okay, we're looking for something egregious for this guy, this all-American team leader, captain, to fall to the third round. Can be frenetic with false steps at the top of the route. I don't even know what that means. Narrow pedal creates stiffer coverage transitions. What? Below average body control and reactive agility. What are we talking about here, right? This is nitpicking. I don't even know what half this stuff is, right? And this is not to pick on NFL.com. This is obviously a common theme. Otherwise, he would have gone much later than he did, pick number 96, I believe. Again, this is what happens every year over the NFL draft process, especially over a long evaluation cycle. great players, productive players, locker room champions, team captains, leaders, mature people, people who have overcome adversity, coachable players. They get nitpicked to death. And instead of being, hey, this guy's a great football player and a great fit for our team, they fall out of the first round. They fall out of the second round. And teams like the Atlanta Falcons in this instance are very fortunate. They take advantage of the opportunity and they get a great player. They'll be a great fit in the locker room and a team leader for years to come. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons probably are, picking him at 96. They obviously did not see him, as a first round talent or anything like that. But it's very clear the Atlanta Falcons did a good job taking advantage of this opportunity and listening to Raheem Morris once again. They're all aboard this kid because Xavier Watts looks like a special playmaker for this defense.